important, which leads us very nicely on to Sally. Sally Brockway is WOW PR. She's again been a very valuable contributor to the Chamber, and she's spoke at last year's Chessington Expo, which, just as a plug, is coming on the 23rd of October online. So Sally, and you're going to be talking about how to get your message noticed, which is,
yes,
it's kind of from a more PR perspective, but I think there's some great things which we can take away from this. So the floor is now yours, Sally.
Okay, I shall share my screen. What I'm not good at is technical things, so we're going to have to pray. There we go. Have you all got my screen?
We have.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. I've gone quiet because it's all frozen. Right. Da-da-da. Brilliant. So by now you've watched all these fantastic sessions. Your SEO is fantastic. Your website looks great. Your messaging is brilliant. And now you need people to notice you. You need people to visit your website. You need people to engage in your social media. You need people to know who you are. So my job is to help people stand out online for all the right reasons. I run a small boutique PR agency in Kingston called WOW PR. My background is in journalism. I was, and still am in fact, a journalist, have been for 30 plus years. During that time, I worked with a lot of PR agencies who brought me in to help them write press releases and engage with the press and come up with successful campaigns. Now, just to explain, PR is me raising your reputation, getting people talking about you without having to pay them. So you want journalists, editors, bloggers, influencers to mention your business on their website, in their newspapers, in their magazines, and you're not paying them. You're paying me. Now, why is this better than placing an advert? Because if you read a magazine, the chances are you will not notice the adverts. You will notice the editorial. The fact that the magazine is chosen to write about you gives you a bit of kudos, and the effects of editorial versus advertising, I find it's astonishing. I always say to clients, don't bother with an advert if it hasn't worked before. It's much better to get editorial. So, as I'm saying, the competition is immense online. There are lots of people doing what you do. They've got great websites, they've got great copy, they've got great social media. How do you get people to notice you? So the first thing you need to do is find out what it is that makes you different. Now, I always say to people, there is something about you that's different. Oh, there's not. I'm just a coach. I'm just a this. You're not just a. You are totally unique. So it's about finding that thing about you that's unique that nobody else does. And it's what I call it is finding your story. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about this guy. His name's Kane. He's my newest client who makes sweets. How brilliant having a client that makes sweets. He's 33 and he set this company up in 2017 from his bedroom. And he's a really, really interesting chap. So he came to me provisionally to say, I've got this new range and I want people to talk about it for Christmas presents. So I'm doing a big Christmas gift guide campaign. And he said, I wouldn't mind doing some personal profile pieces. And so I said, great, well, let's see if we can get you placed. Now, so we've got this guy, he's 33, he makes sweets and he's very successful. Now, it's my job to make this as interesting as possible. Now, if you see on the right, there's a picture of Kane with the headline, entrepreneur makes a lot of money. You'd be surprised the number of people who would use that angle to try and get coverage. I went to the press and said, look, I've got sweet success of entrepreneur with no GCSEs, because I discovered this guy has no GCSEs. He suffers from dyslexia. And as a teenager, he ran up a £20,000 credit card debt. So those things make him really interesting. Yes, it's interesting that he's made a lot of money buying sweets, but what's more interesting is the fact that he's done this with no qualifications and everything going against him. So here we have it. In fact, this is a website called Uspire. It's about inspirational people. So I placed an article on him, headline being, "Lad who left school with no GCSEs turns life around to become a candy entrepreneur." So I'd found the hook. I present it to the journalists, go, "We like that." They've interviewed him. He's got a page on their website with a link back to his website, which is the important thing, because we want people to go to your website. The more times they come across the link to your website, the more likely it is they're going to visit it. So when you speak to a journalist, be as nice as possible to them and ask them for a link. You don't always get it, but I find if you're respectful and nice and helpful and you say, "It really helped me if you put a link in," 9 times out of 10, they will do that for you. Now, I've been a journalist for 30 years. If I met you at a party, within seconds, I know what the hook or angle is on you. A little bell goes off in my head and I go, story alert, but you haven't. So you have to train yourself to be able to spot the story. Now, a really good way of doing this is just get a stack of newspapers and magazines, open them to the first page, find a story. Look at the headline. What does it say? Look at the first paragraph. What does that say? That is the hook. That is the angle that somebody went to a journalist with, or the journalist picked up on. Now, I'll give you an example of this. This is a piece on an online magazine, and it's the surprising wedding trends you'll see at your next nuptials. A wedding experts very cleverly thought, COVID-19's really changed weddings here. Could be a chance to get some publicity. So they've come up with this idea of, what do weddings look like now? So this whole piece is just someone's come up with an idea of talking about how different weddings are due to COVID-19. So headline, if you were planning a wedding this year, the good news is it can go ahead. Sadly, your nuptials won't look like the wedding you were dreaming of. And they've come up with this idea. So this wedding planner's got themselves in a national magazine by coming up with a quirky idea. Now, it may well be that the journalist came up with this idea and looked for a wedding planner. But what I'm saying is you can come up with your own ideas and approach journalists. And I know that sounds really scary. Oh my God, approach a journalist. But they look exactly the same as we do when you speak to them on Zoom. They're no different. They're people. They're doing a job. And what they need is stories. So if you come knocking on their door and say, "I've got a story," even if it's not right for them, they will be extremely grateful. This is another example of somebody I work with. This lady is an actress. She's from Surrey, but she lives in America. She paid a not insignificant sum of money to a different PR agency, not me, because she wanted publicity. This is what they came up with. And she showed me this. I don't want to slate off other agencies, but they're in America, so I feel it's okay, and I won't tell you who they are. So she said, "This is my press release. It says British actress Julia Farino proves commanding as president in supernatural vampire series Age of the Living Dead." So this video series is on Amazon Prime. There's nobody famous in it, and it's not very well known. And I'm thinking, this isn't a story. It's boring. And the fact is, she'd come to me because this had been sent out and nobody had run it. What a surprise. So I chatted to this lady and I said, "Look, you will have a story, we've just got to find it." So we had a discussion. I came up with this story that she lives in LA and she suffers from a vitamin D deficiency, which is caused by lack of sunlight. And guess what? Vampires, which is what her TV series is about, cannot go in the sunlight. So this story appeared in a local paper around here in Kingston. It appeared on some TV news sites, and it was even picked up by the BBC Regional News. So even if you get a little story in the local paper, you've got a chance of ending up in the national press and the BBC, because everybody is online and everybody's looking for stories. And if your story is not anywhere, no one's going to find it. But if your story is somewhere, such as the local paper, there are chances are somebody else is going to find it. And I've had instances, which is a PR dream, when I've placed a story in one publication, it's ended up in 10. It makes me look brilliant. I've done a 10th of the work, and it works. So what I'm saying is, you need these little stories appearing. Don't be afraid and think, oh my God, have I got a phone? The time's up. Start with local bloggers, with the local press. The local press are really friendly. They are much more friendly than they would be on the national press. If you phone up these guys, they're overworked, they're underpaid, they're desperate for content. And whenever I speak to a local journalist, they're delighted to hear from me. They're interested to hear what I have to say. And my hit rate with local papers, I mean, it's pretty much 100%. So if you want to start somewhere, start with the local papers. The fact that you live in the area has given you a massive head start. You're already a kind of a story in a Kingston paper because you live in Kingston. And if you've got something interesting to say, the chances are you'll have a story like, so I said, this was really successful. She was delighted because she paid me the same amount she paid the agency in America, and she got results, which is what she was after. So you've also got, as Jude's been talking about, when you're thinking about your story, you also need to think about who are you talking to? Who is your customer? Because if your customer reads the Financial Times, there's no point in you being in the Sun, really. So you need to work out where your customers are hanging out. What are they reading? What newspapers and magazines are they likely to read? What kind of blogs would they read? What social media accounts do they follow? What influencers are they interested in? And as Jude said, if you ask customers, or you know, find out what demographic they are. I mean, what age are your customers? What's the average age? How much money do they earn? You really need to find out who your target customer is, because you need to know where to find them. Because if you've got a great story and it's in the wrong place, it doesn't matter because your customer hasn't seen it. So you need the great story in the right place so that your customer can see it. I hope that doesn't sound, it's not as complicated as I'm making it sound. You know, you for example, if I was speaking to a teenage audience, I'd be thinking about TikTok and certain other channels. I wouldn't be going to the Telegraph. I mean, a lot of it is common sense. And if you do a bit of research on any of these publications or blogs, it will tell you a little bit about who they're aimed at, what the audience is. So do your research before you start any of this work. Well, here I'm about to say the same thing. So when you found where your audience are, what are they reading, where are they hanging out, you need to get your information on those sites. So let's just say, for example, that your audience read Mail Online. So you think, what I'm selling would do really well on Mail Online. So the first thing you need to do is find someone to talk to. And I've done a trumpet here because you're going to be blowing a trumpet when you're doing this. So what I mean, I have a media database that costs me a lot of money, and I don't expect you to invest in one. So a cheaper way of doing this is you go to the newspaper or magazine online that you're interested in. You search for articles that are very similar to your own story, and you find out who's written them and make a list of names. Sarah Smith, she writes about women's health. So does this person, so does this person. And then you need to find their contact details. Now, you can either do this, sometimes you can do a search on Google and their contact details come up. I use something called Rocket Reach, which you have to pay for, but very often that comes up trumps. It will give you email addresses. Sometimes I contact people through LinkedIn. Twitter is a really good way to contact journalists. They expect to be contacted on Twitter, so make sure you're on Twitter. Once you've found your list of people who are writing about the sort of things that you do, you're going to have to speak to them with your message. And we do this by sending what I call a press release. Now, this is a side of A4 paper. I don't mean literally, because we're not going to be posting anything now. But when you write this release, don't make it any longer than a page. A press release is you telling your story. So in the case of that guy with the sweets, I would have done a little piece about, there's this guy, he's got no GCSEs, he's got dyslexia, he had loads of debt, and now he's running a hugely fantastic sweet company. It's in Harrods, it's here, it's there. This is what he says, here's his website. So I'm telling the journalist, look, I've got this story, are you interested? When you send this press release, always cut and paste it into the body of your email. Do not send a document. Journalists are lazy and they will not open them. Make sure there's a picture of something that gives them an idea of what you're talking about. And if you don't have a picture, you haven't got a story. Now, high-res images are essential. I know everyone this week we've talked about the quality of imagery. It's really, really important. So before you hire anyone, I would hire a photographer and make sure I had some fantastic photographs, high-res photographs, because these are what you want to be appearing in newspapers, magazines, blogs, or wherever. Do not attach your high-res image to the body of your email, because it will clog up somebody's inbox and they'll hate you forever. Send them a low-res image. That basically, I'm not a technical person, but it means it doesn't take up a lot of computer memory. So I save a picture on my computer and I make it the lowest resolution possible. I'm on a Mac, there's a little slider. So I know they can see the picture and I'm not clogging up the inbox. But I know that when they're printing, they'll need a really good picture. So I send them a link to all the fantastic pictures. I use Dropbox, you could use Google, or WeTransfer. There's loads of platforms that will help you, but make sure they have access to these fantastic pictures. So you've found the person that writes about people like you. You've got your story. You've written it down in no more than a page in an engaging, exciting way. You've got a low-res image in your email and you've got a link to the high-res images. That is the perfect way to contact journalists, bloggers, influencers. So I run a PR school on Facebook and I say to people, right, the Mail are looking for this, why don't you pitch? And they pitch and they'll go, but I didn't hear back from them, nothing happened. Oh, it doesn't matter. Sometimes I send out 100 emails and I might only get 4 pieces out of it. I know that it's the numbers game. I have to keep going. I have to be persistent. So don't expect to do this once and suddenly you're in the Telegraph. It doesn't work like that. So if you do get a hit, as I said before, ask for a link, because the backlinks are they're gold. So you want people to click back to your website. Success looks like this. When I start working with a new client, especially a small business, I might do a Google search on them and not much comes up. And what I want is, by the time I've finished, I want to do a Google search and a few pages have come up, links to articles that I've managed to place. Because the more stuff there is online about you, the likelier people are going to find you. Now, I recently bought this funny little gadget called a Lumen, which is supposed to hack your metabolism. I won't go into details, but I Googled it to find out what they said, and they've been really smart in their PR, because they've got lots of fitness bloggers and journalists to research this little gizmo. So I read loads of really informative articles, not written by the company, but written by people who are interested in the product, and all the company had done would send them a free sample. So often that's all you have to do if you've got a product, is to send the journalist a free sample, and if they like it, they will write about it. So success is lots of mentions of you when you type in your business name in Google. And as I said, once I've done a PR campaign with a client, I want to see lots of these hits coming up. If they're small influencers, local papers, that's fine. Even better if it's something like Mail Online, because these national newspapers, millions and millions of people visit those websites every day. I did some PR for a woman with a fitness app who's actually going on to Dragon's Den this month, and she needed subscribers and not much was happening, and she was desperately trying to do her own. She was in my PR school and she paid me to do a day. I said, right, give me that, I'll work on it for a day. I can't promise you much because a day is not a long time, but well, let's see what we can do. So I managed to get her just a little piece in Metro. Now, Metro is one of the most visited news sites in the UK, and within hours 1,600 people subscribed to her fitness app. So that is the power of some of these national newspaper sites. So when I have a client, the gold standard, the Olympics, is Mail Online, Sun Online, Mirror Online, because I know if I get a hit in one of those, loads of people are going to be interested in their business. They might sell out of their product. It's not always the case. I had an author, I got her a double page in the Express, and she sold 2 books off the back of it. So it doesn't always work, but very often, if you can get yourself in a big national newspaper, you're laughing. So you're going to say to me, but how do I get myself into a national newspaper? So I'm going to give you a secret weapon. Now this is gold. If you do this for 10 minutes every day, I guarantee you within the space of a year, you will have appeared in a national newspaper. So you need to make a note of this web address, which is www.journorequests.com, and sign up. Now, this is a daily email which will go in your inbox every day to tell you what journalists are writing about and what they're looking for. So these are journalists who are already looking for someone like you for their article. So let's just say I'm doing something on COVID-19 and its effect on fitness. So I might, this is what the email looks like. So I might say to people, I'm doing an article on fitness for the Times. If you're a fitness instructor, send me a message. Every day this drops into my inbox. It's just a little bit of it. It goes on for a few pages. So these journalist requests come in different categories. So for example, business and finance. Are you a London business? What do you think of Rishi Sunak's announcement of financial measures? Will it help you? Journo request. So she's saying reply on Twitter. So you click onto her Twitter handle, you go through and you message her and you say, do you know what? I've got a business in London. His financial measures mean we're going to lose 10,000, or we're going to do this, or it's going to do this. Here's a link to my website. Here's a picture of me. I'd love to talk to you about it. And then you press send. Now, in my PR school in Facebook, I have a young lady that makes crockery. She does this for 10 minutes every day. Some of my students do it once and they go, oh, nobody got back to me. And I say, you've got to keep going, but they don't. Now, this young lady with the crockery who keeps going, she's been in the Telegraph, she's been on the radio, she's been in the Daily Mail, she's been in Marie Claire. It looks like she's having a 10 grand a month PR campaign behind her, but she's not. All she's doing is responding to these journo requests. So 10 minutes a day, get this email in your inbox, find the ones that are relevant for you and respond to them. Now, you can, in my PR school, you don't need me to do this, but I do handhold people through this process in my PR school. But really, it's easy. You're just sending an email to somebody and they're already looking for you anyway. So you've got a massive, massive head start. So when you contact your journalist via journo request, write a short summary of why you're ideal for their request. So you say, I'm so-and-so, I run a small business, I make this, we have a turnover of this, and these government measures mean we're going to lose £10,000. Here's my picture, a low-res picture. Here's a link of some high-res images. Here is my website link. If you have a press release already, attach it. You can attach it as a document because you're pitching. Now, you need to make sure you always include these things. Your contact details, you'd be surprised. People do actually get in touch with journalists and not put their phone number. And journalists sometimes just want a phone number, but make sure your phone number is there. They'll have your email address. If you're making products, make sure they're aware of your prices. Always give them a link to your website. And as I said, let them know what it is you do. I mean, I've seen press, there's a journalist forum on Facebook where journalists talk about the worst press releases they receive. I mean, it's a terrible thing. Hopefully I've never been on it. But we've had examples of press releases on that forum where we cannot work out what the product is, what they're talking about. Oh, what a waste of time. So just make it really basic and clear what it is you do, how much it costs, where we can buy it. So as I said, that journo request thing, it is a secret weapon, 10 minutes a day, and I trust you, promise me you will be famous in the space of a year. Sorry, that is my timer, which I don't know how to turn off. So when you do speak to, when you get a hit and you do get through to a journalist and they want to speak to you on the telephone, I'd just say, remember, everything you say reflects on you and your business. Never, ever slate your competitors. I've got a couple of big corporate clients and they're so super careful about what they say. I look after Crunchyroll, which is an anime streaming platform, and they never, ever, ever slag off Netflix. They only ever say nice things about Netflix because they know how that will reflect on them. So just make sure when you're speaking to a journalist, every single word you say reflects well on you. Now, contrary to popular belief, journalists don't make things up. They may put a bit of spin on things, but it will be down to what you tell them, will be down to how the story appears. So that's me. I'm Sally Brockway. Those are my contact details. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so, so much, Sally. And you can get back to killing your phone. Would you mind just taking your slides off the screen?
There we go. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I think what's I always find very interesting when I listen to Sally is that it's this, we do our networking, we do our social media, and it's a very undervalued and sort of just slightly off to one side. We don't pay enough regard to that PR side. It's really another stream of storytelling and getting a message out. And I think it's very good that it actually comes back into getting your online to see where you get in with Google ratings. I'm conscious that we've kind of gone up to 10:30, but I just want to, before we finish this session, does anybody have any questions which they'd really like to ask either Jude or Sally? Lawrence.
Hi, Sally. Very interesting talk. Yeah, suppose if you have successfully contacted a journalist and with maybe a few rounds of emails, yeah, but if they don't take your story immediately, what's the best way to keep the journalist interested in what you do? So maybe sometime in the future, they may come back to you again.
Yeah, don't be disheartened if they don't take your story immediately, but go back to them with another story. Not immediately, not the next day, not even the next week, but maybe in 4 to 6 weeks' time, go back to them and you'd say, oh, I contacted you before this and now I've got this story. And that, I mean, it's all about relationship. So if you manage to build a good relationship with the journalist, they will always help you out. So just go back to them, but not too quickly. They don't like to be hounded.
Okay, it's a sense in the mood. They may send you email with the polite words, but you never know whether they may send a reply email to hundreds of people. So
hey, I'll be honest. I'll be honest, they very often, you don't hear back from them. If you've got a really good story, they'll be on back to you in 5 minutes. Often they just don't get back to you, but I never let that put me off. I just get back to them again with another story.
Thank you.
Persistence pays off, doesn't it, Sally?
Yes.
Does anybody else have any other quick questions for Jude or for Sally before we break off for a refreshing cup of tea, I suspect, or coffee? No? Okay, good. Well, we'll come back for 11 o'clock and we will be joined by Amanda Cullen here and Howard on GDPR. And as my colleague Amanda pointed out, I slipped up on doing something non-GDPR yesterday, so I should get my knuckles wrapped. So I'm sure Howard will give us some very good tips, which I will listen into. So we'll see you at 11 o'clock. Thank you, and see you shortly. Bye-bye.
Bye.